to Chloe from last week's meeting, so I'll be holding off until next week to vote on not only last week's minutes, but the minutes from today's meeting. And next is roll call.
Samantha?
Okay.
Courtney? And Rogello.
Thank you. Next we have our invited speaker today, which is actually the president of NECC, Lane Glenn. Did you expect us to have questions for you? Did you have something you wanted to present, or?
Yes.
Yeah, yes.
Both those things. So, yes, I have something I think you'll be interested in, but before I do that, if you have some questions, and I always come with a list of things I think you might be interested in. I have half an hour today, or if you need me for less time than that, I can scoot down to 10 minutes.
I think
I do want to give you this stuff and tell you what it's about at some point.
great.
But
And we were also thinking of possibly doing a picture with you, if that's okay,
All right.
before you leave. Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. So I do have questions that we came up for you from last week's meetings, but first I kind of just want to make it an open forum for anyone to ask any questions before I start with the ones that I have prepared. Felipe, do you have a question? Okay.
Felipe, where's our camera here?
It's right in front of you, yeah.
All right.
So
think
weird.
we-
Oh, it's the moving one, okay, good.
Yeah.
There you go.
So one question that we did have from last week is an update on the Lift campaign that you're doing. And we know that you have different categories for people to donate to, so we were wondering which categories are doing better than others.
The one that is doing the best still is our Lawrence Promise Program Fund, which, so I want to be careful how I say this because I don't want to make it seem as if we're done, but our first goal for that fund was $1 million, and we are in the vicinity of that right now, I'll put it that way. We have a special event coming up on March 26th in Lawrence, in which we'll celebrate some of the people who have contributed, people and organizations who have contributed sizable amounts of money. So Eastern Bank, for example, $100,000, Gemline Group, $100,000, the Stevens Family Foundation, $250,000, things like that. And then we'll have a couple of students speaking at that who have been early college students who have transitioned to college. We are also now focusing efforts on the Behavioral Promise Program, which is also meant to be $1 million. We have somewhere around 150 already, but we also, in addition to that, have $100,000 in a fund through the state budget this year in what's called matching dollars. So as soon as we identify an additional $100,000 to match that, we'll have 200, right? So we've got 150 now, we'll have another 200 out of that 350, and a few more prospects that we're talking to will get us in the range of about halfway to our goal for the Behavioral Promise, which is pretty good. We have temporarily set aside fundraising for the athletics renovations because, as I think I shared with you last time I was here, we're in conversations with the Haverhill YMCA about possibly building a new facility, a new YMCA on this campus that would bring us pools, maybe an indoor track, all kinds of cool stuff. In Lawrence, we already have an arrangement with the Y where all students, faculty, staff have memberships, and you can go over there and work out. Here we have a nice new facility right on our campus if it works out. So we're exploring the feasibility of that. And some of the other components of the campaign, the student success pieces of it, the academic centers, things like that. Our new Vice President for Advancement, Allison Wilson, and Bill Heineman and his staff have been sort of repackaging some of those things in anticipation of some new asks. The Hospitality and Culinary Arts Fund, which is also $1 million. We have been getting our contributions from the Napoli companies and strategizing with them some of their contacts to seek additional donations from. That's an ongoing fund, and throughout the rest of this year, we anticipate getting more contributions to it. Hopefully that building will be opening for us anyway within a couple of months. We think April 1st, thereabouts, we'll move into it, that building downtown Haverhill. And then a month or two later, start to offer some classes in there.
Awesome. Is there any follow-up questions with everything you just presented?
Where'd Felipe go? I was looking at him, he disappeared. What?
Thank you. too.
He couldn't hear me, so he's going to the bathroom where he can hear better?
No, that's the ladies' bathroom.
Oh, that's the ladies' room, never mind.
Not the men's room.
Never mind.
We have no confirmation on the men's bathroom.
So I just had a quick question. So I'm reporting on the meeting today, and I had because I'm not sure what the $1 million was referring to, and so I just wanted to clarify and ask what plan this is really.
So the question had to do with a major gifts campaign that we launched about a year and a half or so ago.
Yeah.
Technically, we're still in the quiet phase, which what that means for a fundraising campaign is
Yeah.
you don't send out a whole lot of written materials, you're not publicizing a lot about it, we talk about it. But it's called the LIFT campaign, Leading into the Future Together.
Leading into the,
Yep, it's up to a $7 million campaign for the college over a period of a few years. So the first million that I was describing was $1 million endowment for scholarships for Lawrence early college students.
Where's the endowment coming from?
The money that we're raising.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so we're asking
So
people to
community voices basically.
Yeah, some individuals, some companies, banks, foundations. So we are very close to having our $1 million for that fund. And then the other $1 million fund that I mentioned is the Haverhill Promise.
Yeah.
Functions the same way, but for Haverhill early college students.
Yeah, cool, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
I have one. Did the LIFT campaign have anything to do with the library?
Yes,
How's
so,
that going?
yeah, when you launch a campaign like this, or at least this kind of a big gifts campaign, frequently you have several different things that you're interested in. You conduct a feasibility study to gauge the community's interest in those items. When we conducted our feasibility study a couple of years ago, the library, some IT equipment, there were a number of things that were included in the feasibility study that suggested people might be interested in them. As we have been out fundraising, it's been harder to get dollars for those things. Nobody's interested in the IT right now. I thought we'd do better with the library, and maybe we will someday. But at the moment, we have been more successful in these other areas. So it's not that we won't raise money for it, it's that at the moment, these other things are faring better. So we're going to do them first and come back to it.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? And Lawrence, can you hear everything okay?
We're good.
Okay. If not, then I'll move on. Someone wanted to know, what is your view on a chief diversity officer, and if you foresee the need to bring this type of profession to NECC?
I've had conflicting views on the role of the chief diversity officer. Does everybody know what she's asking about? So I have stated very clearly that the number one goal of this college right now, and we have lots of goals, it doesn't mean other things aren't important. It does mean that in terms of student success, the one goal that is most important is what we call the equity imperative, which is closing the gaps in student success, specifically between Latino students and white students. We are better than most community colleges in Massachusetts at that already. We are, but there's still a gap, and that's unacceptable. We have narrowed that gap. And by the way, when I talk about a student success gap, it's a combination of things, right? It's looking at retention, degree completion, transfer, all the ways that you as students want to be successful, for the most part, right? On average, the last couple of years, that gap has narrowed to about 6%. We want to get rid of it. How do you do that? Well, before I say anything else, let me ask you, how do you do that? How do you get rid of that gap? What do you think? What are some ways we might close that gap? Is that Felipe have an idea over there?
We were discussing that. I asked him if he knew what you were asking about, but I think like sometimes just like understanding like the translation of words and what that means to him in his language. So we were just that's what we were just chatting about.
Sometimes it's not in the volume of the mic. Sometimes it just lowers. So sometimes the mic doesn't catch the words.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
There's gaps.
Well, so there are lots of ways to do that, right? You think about preparedness for college in the first place, working with our K-12 partners, not just at Lawrence, by the way, but at Haverhill and Methuen and everywhere else, to ensure that all the students who are coming to us, and maybe particularly Latino students who may have immigrant backgrounds, for whom English may be a second language, are even better prepared for the college experience when they arrive. That's one thing you can do. In addition to that, of course, additional support services. So we have had what's called Title V funding a couple of times over the last 10 years. Millions of dollars to build out student success centers aimed toward Latino students, but benefiting all students. When we have had those dollars and when we have had the additional staff, that success rate has, the gap is closed. And then when the dollars go away and the staff go away, the rate starts to climb, right? So we know there are some things that we can do in terms of intensive advising services, things like that, that will help. And there's plenty of research to suggest that having a diverse faculty and staff on the campus, right, making sure that the environment reflects the student body. We are, as of 2017, we are what is sometimes referred to as a majority-minority campus, right? More than half our students are students of color. That's not the case with our employees, right? It's not the case with our board of trustees. By the way, it doesn't mean it should be like a one-for-one, right? I don't want to make the mistake of anyone thinking that only a Latino faculty member can teach a Latino student any more than only a white faculty member can teach a white student. It doesn't work that way. And it's important to have an environment in which everyone feels comfortable, and there are role models for everybody. So when colleges look to potentially hire a chief diversity officer, sometimes what they're doing is trying to hire a person who will put the pressure on department chairs and deans and vice presidents and presidents, right, to be a conscience in hiring decisions and in disagreements between students and faculty or between employee groups to help mediate those kinds of things and create an environment where people who historically may be underserved or not have the advantages, where that playing field is level a bit. Here's why I've always been a bit conflicted over whether or not to hire such a person. In my own experience, sometimes when you make that someone's job, other people feel that it's not their job. And in my view, everybody should share that responsibility, right? If I put it all in one person's title in one person's office, even if they have a couple of staff, then it might lead others to think, well, they'll take care of that. I don't have to think about it. And I want Sheila to think about it, and me to think about it, and Bill Heineman to think about it, and everybody, right? So I've been conflicted over that one. Do you all have an opinion?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I feel, I get the point that you're making. Like having someone be at their primary job kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It lessens the value of bringing, or trying to lower that gap from the rest of the faculty.
Here's what I am doing. So Mike McCarthy, who now supervises our human resource office, I asked him a few weeks ago to prepare, by the way, there are things we already do to try to diversify hiring practices and achieve a faculty and staff composition that is more reflective of the student body. So in our job postings, we say things to signal to the community at large, that we're a receptive, open place, that we want everybody to apply. When we're running searches, we look at the search pools to see who's in the pool, and if a pool isn't diverse enough, sometimes we'll repost to try to expand that pool a bit. And there are more things we could be doing, right? Requiring that interview candidates, when you have 7 or 8 people coming to campus, that you have a diverse pool of interviewees. It's not enough just to have a diverse starting pool if you don't actually bring people to the campus and interview them. There are other steps we can take. So I've asked Mike, really by the end of this month, to have some additional steps for us to look at as a leadership cabinet to implement by the time the spring is out.
Sorry, who's Mike?
Mike McCarthy, he's our Vice President of Administration of Finance.
Cool, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Mike's basically in charge of a lot of things, such as
Yeah.
like food and transportation.
He's our Chief Operating Officer,
Yeah.
which, means all the operations of the college. He does
Yeah.
a lot of stuff.
So yeah,
Yeah. Also, I do want to mention, don't feel intimidated to share your voice. I know that I sometimes personally feel that way too, where it's like scary of feeling like you're going to say something that might be wrong. But just know that nothing you say here is wrong in any way. We're all just here to share opinions and get a better understanding of how to move forward.
That's a good reminder.
Yeah, and I agree that it's a complicated thing to handle, of knowing what's the balance between having certain positions to further enforce diversity, but also whether that might create some sort of feelings of apathy in others, so.
I have gone back and forth. A few months ago, I was ready to do it, I was ready to hire somebody. The other challenge that I sometimes see with that position is inevitably, and for good reason, the person you hire into that role is a person of color, or they are a person who identifies as part of an LGBTQ group, right? They are somebody who represents one of the groups you are trying to aid through the office. And that's great, except that it also sometimes makes it seem as if that person is the spokesperson for the entire group, and that's unfair. So I'm conflicted about that. And if we don't do better at diversifying our employees, a year from now, I'll probably be inclined to want to do it just to try it and see if it can help us, if that makes any sense.
I think for me, I do vacillate, go back and forth as well, in the sense that it's not that, for me, when you have one individual who wears this hat, is now going to be burdened by, going forward and creating a plan and making it go forward, so that no one else, everyone else is basically saying, well, we've got this person, they're going to figure it out, and then we'll benefit somehow. But for me, there's always this concept of structure. And I know in the past, we've kind of had groupings of individuals who've tried to have these conversations, and we now have Leading for Change, which has gone leaps and bounds from what we had before. But even throughout that conversation, we do feel like we're getting there, but we wish that we got there faster, and perhaps with this person who would be more inclined to know how to set up a structure, the skeleton of how do we get there, and what are the different components of the college that could kind of get us going to that direction, might benefit us in maybe not just getting there faster, but getting it right.
Yeah.
So it's a conundrum. It's a difficult question, I have to admit. But every so often we kind of go back like, I wish we could have someone who just, would say, okay, these are the components of the college, we need to do this here, that there, and then so that we could implement.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Candidly, the other challenge associated with it is budgetary, right? So the person you're talking about, between salary and benefits, it's going to be over $100,000 roll in the budget. And it's a tough thing for us to take on because there are so many priorities for that, right? Yes, this is a priority. Is it going to be as important as some of the other things that we're stacking up here? Yeah, so I guess the short answer, I'm open to arguments that tell me I'm wrong about this, but up until now, I have resisted doing it.
Is there anyone who has opinions on why it might be valuable or not valuable to have this position on campus? Matt?
Yeah, so I'm all for diversity, but one concern for me is I see it at a lot of other colleges, or even students being accepted into colleges. That's a big thing right now, of people rejecting students or faculty into an organization because they're trying to diversify their area more. So I read a story online about this person that got sent a letter, they were rejected into admission in college or whatever, because that college had to meet a certain quota of Hispanic or Latino or Black people to go into that school. And I guess my main concern, what I'm trying to say, is if the hiring process coming in here, like if there's I feel like it shouldn't be abused. If there's like credentials versus diversity,
I think was it Unilever who just announced that they have reached an equilibrium, 50-50 men and women as far as diversity. And to me, it's wonderful. But should it be celebrated? I mean, is it just a quota that we're trying to? We've matched our matched our men and women. It has to be more generic. It has to be. I mean, our student population is becoming more Hispanic. So we need to reflect that as opposed to try to kind of build our quota. Should we have half and half, or not admit students because they're not within the minority group that we're trying to cater
Yeah.
to.
And to
right?
be clear, quotas are illegal and wrong. We will not drive change that way. We will not drive according to a certain number or a certain percentage. Whatever article you read, likely, maybe it was an opinion piece that seemed to suggest that the college had a quota. It's illegal for them to have a quota. So yeah, it's completely illegal. It's incorrect to do that. So as I was describing, hiring goals, note what I said was, an employee base that is more reflective of our student body. I don't know what that is exactly, right? It's changing all the time. But it's not, 51%, this, it's not exact. We have far more women working here than men, by a long shot, right?
Yes.
And guess what? We have a much larger female student body too. It's not exactly the same, but, there are a lot more women working here than men. Place seems to work okay.
Thank you.
Well, my point is, I'm not trying to claw back and make it, 50-50 men and women, right? It's not about that, to
It
show this
is,
one.
absolutely.
It's not about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, you may have more questions, and I have to leave in 10 minutes.
So it seems like a complicated issue, but moving on. What ideas do you have for the next strategic plan since the current one ends in 2020?
So we are finalizing our New England Commission on Higher Education self-study. Some of you have been involved in it, thank you. That's that sort of comprehensive inspection that we do of ourselves, and that an outside group of people will come and do this October. There's a president of Bakersfield College in California who will be leading the team of people coming to visit us in October, and she'll be on campus next Tuesday. I'm going to visit with her. Our report will be finalized by the end of this month, and it responds to how well we think we're doing according to the 9 standards of the New England Commission on Higher Education. From that report, we are creating what are called projections, some things that we say we intend to do over the next few years. I anticipate that those projections will form the basis for the next strategic plan. So the last couple of times we've done a strategic plan, we've the last time we started with the previous plan, looked at the things we wanted to keep doing and then added stuff to it. Before that, we kind of started from scratch and said, what do we want to do? This time, we'll be starting from these projections. Right? And the projections will have to do with some student success measures. They'll have to do with what we were just talking about, right? The diversification of faculty and staff. They'll have to do with where we spend our money, all these different things that we know are important for the college. Like most community colleges in the country right now, we'll have enrollment projections and things that we think are important to drive enrollment for the next few years, because that's been a challenge, and budgetary things. Those will be the beginning of it.
Does anyone have questions on that, Felipe? Yeah.
You said that you're gonna make a meeting with a group in California, in a college in California, you said?
Yes.
College,
I'm sorry, what? You guys who it is?
No, I think so that was it.
Oh, that was it, okay.
Did you say that was it, or who is it?
No, but not the
The name of the college.
Bakersfield. The president is Sonia Christian. So we've done something a bit unusual here, Felipe. Around the country, there are 6 what are called regional accrediting agencies, and they inspect, if you will, and accredit all the colleges and universities within their region. So NECHI, our accrediting agency, inspects us, they inspect Harvard, they inspect Tufts, they inspect Salem State University, every college and university in the region. And usually, the teams of people who come and visit them are from that region, right? They're presidents and provosts and faculty and staff sort of visiting each other. We as a college tend to be pretty experimental. We try new stuff a lot. We're always asking our accrediting agency for special permission to try things and experiment. And so this time around, we specifically asked for them to find a president to lead the team who was familiar with experimentation and trying new things and the kind of culture that we have here that we feel is maybe different from other colleges. So they went outside of our region and asked this president to do this. It was really a nice gesture for them. It should be an interesting ride for us. By the way, you all will have a chance to read the self-study. Some of you may have already, I don't remember what point the drafts went out. But later this month, we'll have it open for public, or maybe next month, for public view as well. So you'll have a chance to read it and comment on it.
Yeah, I think it only went to the chairs.
I want to extend just a little bit. In one of those experiments that you mentioned, is there the possibility of another campus? Like, for example, there's an April campus, there's Lawrence campus. Is there any possibility that there's going to be another campus?
No, we're not planning that right now. Did I say something that made you think that? Okay.
Do you think
That
that's
you were so
something
experimental that you're going to experiment on.
Yeah. No, we're not. We're not opening a campus in California, if that's what you're wondering. That's not happening. Can I distribute these so I make sure that you guys have them? And Felipe and Stephanie, I'm sorry, I'll have to maybe email these to Samantha and have her share them with you. But what I'm handing out right now, all right, if you pass these around, everybody takes a packet. I think I've made enough there. This is the time of year when the community colleges put together our budget and legislative priorities for the state. And what I'm sharing with you is a copy of the first page, what our budget priorities are for fiscal year '21. Almost everything on this, actually everything on this page already exists except the first thing, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. So the rest of them have to do with, what's called the base appropriations for all 15 community colleges, $307 million. Money that goes into a funding formula that can get us some additional funding, workforce training funds. All this stuff on this page, except for the first item, are things that already exist. And this is how much money we're asking for those things across the entire state, right? All 15 community colleges. The top line item there for the Success Fund is a new line item that we're looking for. I don't know if any of you guys ever see my blog that I write. Sometimes I write stories and they go out about things that are happening on campus or things I'm advocating for, whether it's immigrant education or higher ed policy, all kinds of different things. I wrote a piece last fall that ended up in Commonwealth Magazine in Boston, and it was about $1,561 for student success is the title. And that comes from the funding for our PACE program. Who knows what our PACE program is? Anybody? Are you in the PACE program?
No, but I was told about it because, like, I'm technically a first-gen student,
Yeah.
so they're like, oh, you should join it. So I
So,
might get some scholarships. Really?
Are you in it?
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I may tap you to come to the state house. In any event, so our PACE program, it's a federally funded TRIO program. We get about $400,000 for it from the federal government, which, based on the number of students we have, works out to be $1,561 per student. The difference in student success between the overall student population and students in our PACE program is anywhere between 20 and 30 points. It's huge. The PACE program almost guarantees, it's like an 85% success and transfer, graduation and transfer rate. So students like Matt who go into this program, are far more likely to finish their degrees here, transfer to four-year schools, get those degrees and be successful. And like you just said, they're the same as every other student. They're first-generation students, often low-income students. And what we're able to provide, well, Matt, what does the PACE program provide?
A lot. I just joined last year, which is a little late for me, but they've been helping my whole transfer process. They've helped me look at schools as far as career advising, class setup, class schedule. They help me with everything on a need-to-know basis.
And I mean, they're a resource, so you always have somebody to turn to, right? Which not every student feels, yeah. So the argument that I made in the piece that I wrote, and the argument that all the community colleges are making right now is, for not a whole lot of money, the state of Massachusetts can get a lot more student success. We can get a lot more of you to graduate, to transfer, to get bachelor's degrees, right, and to be ready for the careers that you want to work in. This $14 million is $14 million this year. We would add another $14 million to it the following year, another the following year, another for 4 years, right? for a total of $56 million. That's not enough for every community college student in the state of Massachusetts. It's enough for about 38,000 of them, which is the number of low-income, first-generation minority college students among the 15 community colleges. The money will benefit everybody, right? But we had to use a formula somehow. If you are interested as students in advocating for any of these things, and particularly the Success Fund, what I've given you here is our priorities, the budget language. So this is a bill. This is the language of the bill that we're proposing to the state legislature this year. There are 2 pages that kind of describe everything I just told you, like how and why this funding would be important. And there's a list of our legislative delegation. So the last document, the long one, is our state representatives and state senators. Let me just note that my office printed this out and they included our federal legislators, so Senator Warren, Senator Markey, people like that. This doesn't involve them. So this is only our state representatives, not our federal representatives. So if any of you as students were to choose to contact any of these elected officials and say, hey, we think you ought to fund the Success Fund or any of these other things, it would be the state representatives on here. Right? Or if you as a student senate elected to take a position on that. I know these are the kinds of things you ask me about from time to time, and I know you like to take action sometimes, so I thought I'd share that with you.
Do you mind taking a quick picture?
No, not at all, it's good. Thank you for asking. And I'm sorry, next time maybe I'll try to plan to stay longer if you want me to. Usually I'm here for about half an hour.
Right, yes, we can definitely budget that.
Okay.
I can take a photo. Okay. Jonas, do you want to be a part of that?
Sure.
Where would you like?
Against the wall is fine, or is this one over here? Yeah, this one over here is with you. I think my flash is on.
You guys gonna join us?
Zoe, come on.
Oh,
You're coming. It doesn't matter. It's very close up.
Come around this way and see how it looks.
Oh, yeah.
I can go in the middle there.
Yeah, yeah.
You want to go over there? Would it be easier over here? Might be more light too.
All right, thank you. Everyone good? Yeah? Yes. This isn't just for SGA people. Get in here, Joan.
I'm an observer.
No, it's okay.
I must
Lighting on top of you is horrible, so
You should go over there.
I think you should
Yeah,
go over
let's
there.
do.
Yeah,
And then Jonas will force to be.
All right, then, fine. Yeah.
I have a daughter named Rose. I told you that before?
How old?
She's about to turn 16. You want to help me?
All right, closer together, please.
Isn't this far apart?
Jump in, Felipe.
We're smiling, yes? Awesome, looks good. One more time. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for having me here today, guys.
Thank you for coming.
Appreciate
and
it. I'll see you
answering
next
our
time.
questions.
Yeah, I highly recommend that we go there.
Okay, yeah. I don't know what to start with.
They have a lot of scholarships too.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a good day. All right, now back to our regularly scheduled SGA meeting. How does everyone feel? Good? Tired? That's usually the case.
What I like is that all of the executives, cabinet members you've had on board and that I've witnessed never dumb anything down.
Mhm.
They speak to you the way they would speak to the board of trustees, the way they would speak to the cabinet, to faculty and whatever. So I just want you to understand that they take you seriously, so they're not making things much easier for you to understand. They're using the same terminology, they're kind of acting the same way. I've heard the speech before, it's the exact same thing that was given at the board of trustees, and so there's a lot of trust
Right.
in the SGA. as well as the cabinet members, president, VPs, all concerned. So I think it's a good thing that you guys have established.
Awesome.
Have to be proud of that.
Thank you for telling us that, so
Yeah.
that we're aware of it as well. Yeah.
Important.
Moving on with our agenda, next we have our open forum. This is an opportunity for anybody to say anything that they want. I'm gonna linger for 5 seconds if anyone has anything.
I'll share something.
Sure.
There was a nice article in the new edition that came out today of our college paper. It says, student government needs you. So I need all of you guys to grab one on your way out today, and you guys can read it.
Awesome.
Thank you, Chloe, for helping.
Thank you, Chloe. Another thing that Stephanie and I were talking about, because how we wanted to make these open forums a little bit more interactive if no one has any comments. We did want to talk about the academic centers that are going to be on the Lawrence campus. Stephanie, do you want to talk a little bit about those and how us as students can talk about what we'd like to see in there?
Sure. Is that what you're asking for? I mean, for me, I've been in a small conversation, I don't know much. I do know that this room over, we're in Dimitri building upstairs, 200 over, not too far, is going to be dedicated to multiple of the academic centers being represented in one room. I know probably more closer to the beginning of the fall semester, there was a conversation asking about student government's interest and like what kind of things they wanted to see in there. And I know that it's like now this semester is a lot more closer to it actually happening. And I think about, I just was thinking, we were bouncing ideas off of each other, Sammy and I was just thinking that you guys are, not just you, but all students are the ones who are actually using the centers, that maybe we would want to have a conversation about what students need and want and wish that we had that we don't in the centers that we currently have. And then my thoughts and ideas were to share those with like center leads because I'm sure that they're working on trying to prepare that information. And if we don't see it this academic year, maybe they could help build some of that into some of the work they'll do for the future for the center.
If I could just specify, the room upstairs for the centers is going to be for business, professional studies, and liberal arts only. Health, I believe, is going to Heffney, as well as STEM. All right, and then advising and student services is going to go from El Heffney back into Dimitri on the first floor. So advising is basically going to go into Dimitri and where the student services is currently is going to be the health or STEM center. I think it's the health center there. So there's a lot of going back and forth. And I think the focus on some of the conversations I've been around is trying not to duplicate would be eventually on the first floor, which is the advising, but to really provide a center for students, which would be slightly a challenge, because currently each individual center has its own look and feel, because you're catering to a particular student body that is different from the other. Business students are very focused, you go to the computers, you do your work, and you pretty much go. Liberal arts, you lounge around, you speak, you have conversations, you read books, and not that business students don't read books, we read books. But the look and feel is different. So how do we give all students that look and feel, but at the same time put in the services that you guys want and need? So the more vocal you are about what needs to go there or should go there, the better, and the sooner you do that, the better. So just putting it out there.
Is there any initial reactions to that? Felipe and then Matt.
I got a question. My face was awkward, and I want to know who knows that information. The Happy building, there's a rooftop on the third floor with a door when you can go outside, but it's locked and it has roof. Why can anyone go outside right now?
It's on the, like LC 300, there's a balcony, you can go onto the balcony, 301, LC 301. Is that the one you're talking about? It's usually, I think, open during the summer months or the warm season. I don't know if everyone and anyone can go out there, but I think they can, just that it's not open because of weather.
I was actually under the understanding that the doors are permanently locked.
Only for events?
In general, like no one's allowed out there.
Really?
Yeah, I remember we went to a trustee meeting last year or something like that. I tried to get on the balcony, one of the security guards stopped me. It's like, yeah, no one's allowed out there.
Interesting, because I mean, I've been up there for events and stuff, but
There was a
Good
few
question.
events on the balcony that led
Yeah,
up to
yeah, yeah.
them being allowed out there.
Yeah. I feel like, just like thinking about it, I don't oversee that, but I think just you're thinking about like any other space on campus, we typically have to reserve it. You can't just like walk in and just like be there in case there's something else going on and they're prepared for it. But that might be something that SGA wants to do, is reserve that space to have, I don't know, a gathering or a celebration or something there so that we can, I know Felipe's super excited right now about wanting to go out there and see what it looks like.
Looks good. It has to look good because I have looked from the parking lot, as you call it, happening, and it was good. So I'm just wondering, I just want to see it. And it's a private place, but it sounds public, but there's not any kind of sign that says it's private. Well, it's private.
Right. Yeah, that's something interesting to look into. For the academic centers, is there anything, I think, Matt, you had your hand up, do you still have your hand up
Yes.
mentally? Yeah, okay.
So for the academic centers, is it something kind of like the STEM Center right now in TC building?
Right, like how we have the liberal arts center, and the C building and the business center, so it would be that, except those three,
In one space.
they're in one space instead of in separate spaces like we have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One suggestion I do kind of have is I spent a little bit of time in the STEM Center in the TC building, and the one thing that stands out that's different from the rest is they have a lot of interactive stuff for students to do. So, like I walk into the math and science tutoring center, and it's just whiteboards and some tutors and stuff like that. But in the STEM Center, like you can walk in, there's like designated computers for students to work at, whiteboards, study rooms, obviously tutors. There's board games resembling computer science code. So I guess one suggestion would be like more decoration, more catering towards each area. I guess make it a little fun.
And I think what we're trying to understand is, because it's all three in one, what does a liberal arts student want to see in there? Do you want to see an area that says liberal arts, so you know your faculty is going to be sitting there when you're walking into the center, that you're not kind of confused as to where should I go to get information? And so, and will there be faculty there? Will there be advising? Because general advising is one thing, but now we're advising in the centers that are more focused for industry purposes, right? Is that going to change when we have three? Then so would there be one for liberal arts, one for professional studies, one for business, or one person who would know all three? So those are kind of like, what are the best services that you've been seeing in the centers that you would want duplicated in the multi-year?
I think, sorry, Chloe, you had your hand up.
So if somebody had suggestions for this, who would they contact?
So I believe there is a committee, and if you have any suggestions, you can certainly send them to me, and I will send them to Judith, Professor Ciampi, who is the faculty lead for business, and she is sitting on a committee that is currently organizing that. However, Janice Rogers is currently designated as the person who's going to organize that center. So I guess Janice Rogers would be the best person to send to.
What I was gonna say is, I think for that center, distinguishing them as separate things would probably be in the best interest of students, so that there's more specialization in each part of the center, rather than someone who is a liberal arts major and might not know what they want to do going to a business person, where they might sometimes even get more confused. So I think distinguishing those sections would be important, as well as catering more to what their needs are. As you said, each center has its own type of feel, maybe trying to emulate those in like little microcosms would be a good idea.
Yeah.
Any other opinions on that? All right, I'm gonna move on from the open forum then. I'm on my phone because we do have enough agendas. So for old business, we have all club engagement on here. I did want to point out that the dates that we had to be determined are coming up fairly quickly. I believe it's the 23rd through the 25th, correct? Yeah. So that is actually about 3 weeks away from now. Actually, no, almost 3 weeks away from now. So for those who don't know, the All Club Engagement is a way for us to connect with clubs on campus and allow them to know what resources they have. For example, we just went through our club budget process, and allowing students to know maybe how the club budget process works and how they might need to file things in order for us to be able to approve certain things. Other things we had planned was having like Sheila Moeller come and talk about communication and how to brand yourself as a club. So a lot of these different ideas of how to make clubs interact more with one another. But I did want to put this on the agenda so that we can keep the plan rolling. I'm going to leave it on the agenda until we actually do come up with everything that we need. So one thing, I know that I talked to Chloe, she has sent out the emails to everyone. Sheila, you had something?
I'm sorry, yeah, I did get the email. Did you get my response? Okay. And I do appreciate that you changed it to all college engagement.
Yeah.
Much
You want to
appreciated.
steal the mojo?
Yes, no. We have enough of the acronyms that's similar to similar.
And Stephanie said she would be able to present. She's going to fill in for whatever dates, and I believe Zoe is helping her with that as well. And then Amy did respond as well. I'm sorry, I'm stealing Chloe's report right now. Amy did respond as well, and she is going to be talking about fundraising. She is part of the RadTech Club on campus, and they do a really great job of fundraising, so we want to hear her secrets of how she fundraises so well. So yeah, I think since Allie hasn't responded yet, I believe, and she's out of office at the moment. So we won't hear from her in a bit. But moving forward with that, I think we now need to start reaching out to those clubs. I know that Zoe said she would take on that responsibility as soon as we have solidified dates. So did anyone in their responses tell you a date that they preferred?
Sheila
Yeah.
said I believe the 23rd from 12:30
Yeah,
to
to 2:30. Or no? March
I didn't know.
23rd is 3 to 5.
Oh, March 24th, 12:30 to 1.
Okay. So Sheila for that. And then did Amy say that she had a specific date she wanted to do?
No, she said she wants to help in any way if she can.
Okay, so I think that we actually could solidify these dates then, since we have people who are willing to do any of those times. So now we just need to move forward with reaching out to clubs and letting them know that this is going to be happening. So I can take on that responsibility of sending the specific dates to Zoe. And I believe that's all we need to do for right now. Can anyone else think of something that we should be focusing on as a task for the moment? Yes? Yeah.
We meet in coordinate as well, email and I'll so it's gonna take over that.
Zoe?
I know,
Yeah.
I already told stuff. I'll put it on my task list.
Awesome. So
Did you guys, I have no idea what was just said.
So Rosie Ellis was clarifying that she's no longer reaching out to clubs and that Zoe is going to take over that responsibility. And then, oh, you had something?
Yeah, or Amy, or you don't need an email back, or you need an email back?
Yeah, I think that, maybe March 23rd can be Stephanie, and her presentation, and then March 25th can be, Amy, so we can reach back out to her and say that that's the date that would best work for her. Yeah, I think that's it. Because we're not necessarily advertising this, we're gonna be keeping it within clubs. Something else is making sure we have the snack foods, yes, Matt?
I don't need to.
Oh, no, it's
What are
okay.
the times on those 3 days?
Yeah, so March 23rd, it's going to be from 3 to 5 p.m. on the Lawrence campus. March 24th, it's going to be on the Haverhill campus from 12:30 to 2:30. And March 25th, it will be on the Haverhill campus from 12:30 to 2:30. And the reason we picked those times is because there's a lot more clubs on the Haverhill campus. So that's why we chose 2 days for Haverhill and 1 day for Lawrence, as well as there's certain clubs that meet during the time that this would be hosted. So we wanted to cater to the clubs as best as possible and picking a time that is best for them. I think that's it. We just need to start creating an introduction and a conclusion. I think that I said Courtney and I would be presenting for this, so I can start having communication with Courtney about presenting. Is there anything else that we need to do? Voting on snacks next week? Yeah, Stephanie? Okay.
I was just gonna say,
Yeah.
voting on the budget, but.
Awesome. So once we get more information about how much we want to spend for this event, which I am going to be meeting with Ally and Rosie Ellis, with Ally, to get a better gauge of our budget, and then we can decide next week how much we'd like to spend on this event. And I really can't think of anything else at the moment. So I think we're good. Yeah?
When you chat about, well, I guess what we think about for next week when we're voting, thinking about also not only the snacks, but we talked about the most involved club or the most attendance from each club getting something. Can you include ideas for that in pricing?
I thought we were just gonna give them merchandise.
Like tailored to their club, rather than like our merchandise. It would be like if they wanted to get t-shirts for their club, then we could fund t-shirts for them. So we should look into like OMO again. And well, I guess I'm confused on how to best go about it because it might depend on what a club would want. So maybe we should have specific options of like, you can choose from these 5 things and you can choose one of those to have as merchandising, Stephanie?
You definitely can do it that way, or you could also just figure out like a price limit to be like, we're willing for the most involved club to get $500, and it has to be from OMO. And then they can be assigned to like work with myself, and I can help, since I'm the one who has to communicate with OMO, of like ideas that they can choose from. But maybe just like, I think like choosing how much money we're going to be allocating to that.
Okay. I think that after the budget meeting, then I'll have a better understanding of where we're at, and Rosie Ellis and I could even talk about what a price limit would look like, but I think that's a good plan.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else about club engagement, club engagement? Alrighty, moving on to new business. This is another budgetary thing. I just need someone to motion for business cards that we have been talking about. These would probably range somewhere from $5 to $10, so I would say $10 would be a good amount to vote, but I can't do it, so.
I move to take $10 out of the student government budget for business cards.
The motion is as follows, to take $10 from our budget for business cards. Any debate or discussion? All approved? The motion passes. To take $10 from our budget for business cards. Oh wait, Felipe is actually a new member of student government. So you get a say during the motions as well. So I'm gonna reinstate the motion. The motion is as follows: to take $10 from our budget for business cards. Any debate or discussion? This is the point where you could debate or discuss things, and that's not just for members, but for non-members. And then all approved, this is where you would raise your hand if you approve it. There's going to be all approved, all opposed, where you can oppose the motion, and all abstained, which means you don't have any opinion on the motion. So all approved? The motion passes to take $10 from our budget. And also, again, congratulations, Felipe. We're very excited that you've joined student government. Soon you'll be forced into all our group chats and you'll want to mute your phone forever, so. Awesome. That's all I had on that. Anything else about business cards? All right, moving on to our next agenda topic. Yes, Felipe, we need to schedule a time to chat and take pictures for headshots. Just so you know, I'll be texting or emailing you or something soon. All right. That's okay. So moving on to future meetings. The song's actually like super cyberpunk. I don't even know. When I wrote it, I didn't realize. But future meetings, we want to discuss how we should have meetings moving forward. Is weekly too much for our student population right now? If we want to have more students engaged in student government, is having weekly meetings actually restricting a lot of people from participating? So I'm just going to say that, and if anyone has any opinions on that, feel free to speak. Chloe.
I know my biggest thing is like, I will mention to people like, hey, you should join student government, we meet weekly, but I think their issue is like, you have to come to every meeting. So I think if we were more lenient on our attendance policy, I think we'd have more. That way they can have the option to like come to the meetings, I guess.
So as a member or as a non-member? Well, because I assume you meant as a member. I do have an opposition to that, only because if you allow people to just kind of come and go whenever they please, then they're not really understanding where we are at as a student government at all times, so they might not be able to give their everything in a student government. For non-members, that's why we don't have, we couldn't have an attendance policy. But I think that's why for non-members, it's like you can show up whenever, you're not restricted to anything. Because if you don't want to take on the responsibility of being a part of student government, then you can drop in whenever you please. But if you do want to take on the responsibility, you should be coming to all of our meetings at the bare minimum. Felipe?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I can invite anyone to the meetings?
What?
Invite anyone to the meetings?
You can invite anyone to the meetings, yeah. We encourage you to invite people to the meetings. Bring all your friends, tell them to join student government.
Which of the people here behind us? You can do that.
Then do it.
Work on it.
Trustee Arias?
I feel that our meeting should be bi-weekly, just because of the, many of the students that want to be part of SGA, there's always a class or meeting time. They say that they cannot go because of work. And, every week, some jobs don't give you the schedule for the whole month, so they give you for like 2 weeks or a week, and they don't really know when they're gonna be available for SGA.
Okay. Any other opinions?
Can I have an opinion?
Of course you can.
So we have the same problem, because faculty schedules change every semester on top of that. and sometimes they're forced to take classes that normally meet on our meeting times. So we've had issues. We have an added problem that we have alternates to our members, and sometimes we never see those alternates. We don't even know what they look like sometimes. But we've moved into, some of our meetings are now once a month or once every 3 weeks. Certain academic affairs, for example, cannot manage without meeting every other week. So they have to do that. What we decided to do was to take a look at the number of times we actually take a vote on something, and our attendance, and asked our members whether it would be beneficial if we could have less meetings, but have everyone actually come and participate. And in the meantime, it kind of behooves the chair to communicate to everyone within the month if there are things that are coming up or that they should be mindful of before the meeting. So it does put a more pressure on the chair. But in your case, you're constantly communicating with one another. So that might be another way to resolve some of these issues that you may not have to vote on. Or actually say that if we meet every other week, but if there is an emergency meeting that we have to have, then kind of be aware of that. But I do kind of tend to agree, everyone's schedules are just very busy.
Matt?
Yeah, I kind of want to piggyback off of Sheila a little bit. I mean, I'm not a member, obviously. I do think weekly is a good structure. Only because if there are ever any students that want to come, they say, oh, it's Thursday at this time, and they might show up on that day that there would be no meeting. But also at the same time, I kind of want to piggyback off Sheila and say that I think it's unique depending on the workload of student government. So like, we do meet, and the biggest thing that we do when we meet is vote. And if there's not a lot to vote on, then maybe we take a week off or revise the schedule a little bit, but I think it's unique.
Yeah. Any other opinions, Zoe?
Real quick. Yeah, so I mean, I was thinking, for me, it's not a problem. Like, if I was to join, I feel like, which I probably will, I just didn't get my signatures. I feel like if someone's like just a member at large / like someone who just listens, I feel like they shouldn't be required, maybe required to go like 2 meetings a month, but still have weekly meetings. But anyone who's like on the council, like has like an official position, should be required to go to every meeting, like what you were saying. Not that like, maybe they can miss like one or something if they're like, have work or something, but just my opinion.
Awesome. Anything else? I just said if there's any other opinions or questions. I don't believe we will come to a resolution in this meeting. Right now, I just kind of wanted to hear a gauge of different opinions. And I feel like even just in this, there's a lot of variation of what we should do. So I think this is something that we should continue to talk about, and what is the best way of resolving this. Yeah, I'll leave it at that if there's nothing else to say. Next on our agenda is the Student Advisory Council meeting. So we decided that as a group, we're going to be attending this. It is on the 26th of March, right? Sorry, there's too many things over here. Yeah, I believe it's on the 26th of March. The location is to be determined, but I think, where was it? Yeah.
It's at Bunker Hill Community College.
So it's going to be at Bunker Hill Community College. We decided that we wanted to take the van to go to the Student Advisory Council meeting, so that if anybody wants to, that they can just carpool into the van. It starts at 4 p.m. That's when there's going to be a dinner. So I think we said by the latest we would leave at 3:15 or something like that. Stephanie, do you remember? I think it was 3:15.
I think that we questioned it because we didn't know what people's class schedules were like.
Right. Felipe?
or schools.
Right. Felipe, did you have a question?
You said the SAC meeting starts at 4 p.m. So the bus is gonna go from Haverhill or Lawrence, both locations.
Yeah, so that's something that I had asked during, I believe, last week's meeting, finding out which location we need to leave from. Stephanie, do you know if there's any specifics on that? Because the bus
I
would
can
be
share
in
that.
April, right?
I mean, I guess it's supposed it doesn't matter, I have to pick up the van in Haverhill,
Right,
and I have to return it to Haverhill, but if I need to drive more, I just need to know more ahead of time, I would have to pick them up earlier, probably in Lawrence.
right. Matt?
Sorry, if the meeting's at 4 p.m., you're supposed to leave at 3:20, right?
I said that as a TBD, like to be determined, because I don't know when people's classes are getting out.
It's about 3 minutes.
What happened?
I looked it up right now on maps, and it's about 38 minutes away.
Yeah.
I feel like if you think about traffic to Boston, we're gonna probably at least like 45 minutes to an hour and 15, 20 minutes, depending on, if we can leave that early, then we won't hit as much traffic.
Like 2:45 p.m.
And if I could suggest Stephanie to get in touch with Bunker Hill and find out where to park,
Right.
because parking
Yeah, they-
is atrocious at park.
Great thing too.
Yeah, I think there's a section for buses.
Correct.
So I definitely want the members of SGA to go, so would you be able to go because of your class, right?
Yeah.
So Chloe couldn't go, Rose Ellis, would you be able to go? And if anybody else would like to go, let me know. Definitely right now is the best time to let me know. Matt, you had a question?
Oh, yeah, more of a suggestion. Stephanie kind of said it, getting into Boston is hell. So I would suggest an earlier leaving time.
Yeah.
And also going into Boston, could you leave Haverhill, because Stephanie said she had to pick up the van in Haverhill. Could you leave from Haverhill maybe a little earlier? Pick up the students or Felipe or whoever else in Lawrence and then go to Boston? And then drop them off on the way back to Haverhill?
It depends on people's classes and stuff, so that's why I'm asking now. So personally, I would be able to get to the Haverhill campus at 12 p.m. I know Rose, you're available at 2, right? Yeah. Yeah. Felipe?
Right, so the meeting's at 4, you're gonna leave around 2:50, right? Because of traffic.
We're trying to
That's
figure that out.
All right, and there's some possibility that I won't go because I got a class from 2 to 3:15. It's chemistry, because if I can't tell my professor, he accepts that I can leave at exactly that day at 3, about around 2:50 or 2:40. I can leave at that time. If he is agree with that, I'm gonna notify you guys. I can't tell you guys if you agree with that. But
Right.
right now, I'm not really sure.
You get out of class at 3:15 in Lawrence.
Yes.
I personally would not like you to leave class early. I would rather be late for dinner than for you to leave your class.
I was just gonna suggest that as well. It's not like the meeting officially starts at 4 p.m. The meeting doesn't officially start at 4 p.m. That's when the dinner starts. So it's a nice thing to go to, but it's not a necessity. So if we had to, we could be ready at Lawrence by 3:15 and pick up Felipe and go.
So, what time is the actual meeting?
The actual meeting starts at 5 p.m., but the dinner starts at 4 p.m.
Oh, that, yes, it's good.
So yeah, as student government and as Stephanie, as our advisor, we don't ever support people like leaving their classes for student government related activities because your classes are a priority. So if we can tailor ourselves around you, that's why I was having this conversation, so that we could make sure that we're catering to the students who want to go. And Zoe, are you interested in going? It's okay if you're not.
I don't know, because the thing is I can't be out really late on Thursdays because I have to be back at school at like 9:30 on Fridays. I just started this, it's like research. So it's how late do you think it's gonna go though? Like,
So it ends at 6 PM and we'd probably take like an hour to get back, so we'd probably be back around like 7 o'clock.
I don't know.
I'm gonna make an educated guess, like 7:30.
Sure. Yeah.
Can I let you know like within the next week? Or is
So,
that-
yeah, that would actually be okay. Sorry, I was just looking at the date. That should be fine, right, Stephanie? Yeah.
Okay.
And Matt, you're always welcome to come, even if you're not a member.
I have class Thursday nights.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to get to know a feel for everyone to make sure I'm not including people. So if you want to get back to us within a week, that'd be fine. But we do need to make a motion to take out $100 from our budget, so. Yes, Stephanie?
Can you guys also take out money for gas? Because that's, the $100 is to rent it, we also have to gas up afterwards.
I have no idea how much gas costs for a van, so.
$50.
50.
Well,
Depends on how big it is.
Would 150 in total be a good amount?
it'll be too much, but I'd rather that than not be enough.
Right.
I mentioned to take $150 for fee to the student advisory council. I said it.
The motion is as follows, to take $150 from our budget so that we can get transported to the Student Advisory Council meeting. Any debate or discussion? All approved? The motion passes to take $150 from our budget.
On the support.
Alrighty, moving on, if there's no further questions about that. We have our committee reports. Courtney is the head of the Constitution Committee, so we're gonna move on to the other two that Rosie Ellis is the head of. And first is Transportation Committee.
There's nothing to report on the transportation committee.
I did wanna ask a question about that. Have you emailed Bill Heineman yet about the summer transportation?
I know it's a committee report, but can I say update on that? So, from what I understand, because we are already in, summer is included in the current fiscal, the summer schedule will stay on the schedules. But what Mike McCarthy is going to do is include a study of how many students actually use the buses, and include that with previous summer's report, just so that we have a better understanding of the usership, to see whether it's viable to continue it, or to use that funding to then add to fall and spring.
Right.
And that might include potentially, again, nothing is set in stone yet, but our town livery, who's currently doing the shuttles, is trying to develop an app similar to Uber, but schools don't want Uber on campus just because of reliability of the rides. So that if this application does become a viable means, so that we allocate money from summer to that, and students can actually call a ride from livery instead of taking a shuttle, for example, and then that would pay for their ride, local ride. So we'll see how things go. And Bill Heineman did finalize a 2-year master academics schedule. So with that, Mike McCarthy has gone into MVRTA and proposed to finalize that 5-minute delay for certain of those times that we had set up. We have not yet heard from MVRTA, but we are hopeful.
And the changes will be for the next year, not for this year, so the transportation wouldn't change. You still want to think of them?
No, that's okay, because I know that the reason I was asking you to reach out to him is because he had approached us as a student government and wanted us to do some work around the summer transportation, but it seems like now it's taken care of by Mike McCarthy.
I mean, if you want to, it's up to you guys, but I think it's probably more in the works than,
Yeah, I think we did talk about this last week, is because it wasn't on the we don't have the minutes, we just don't remember.
Okay.
Sheila talked about this last
just a
week.
little bit, but not, it wasn't solidified yet because I just heard from Mike yesterday. And when we have the data, it would be nice in the fall semester to start talking about it, because as soon as we have the data for the summer and add it to the previous summer, we can start making decisions for the following year's budget fiscal year.
Right. Anything else for transportation committee? All right, moving on to the elections committee.
I met with Sam this afternoon, and we talked about the structure, the new plan that we
Stephanie
want
can't
for.
hear you, I think.
I met with Sam this afternoon, and we talked about the new plan for the elections and how we want to approach it. We had a lot of great ideas that after we meet with Ali and talk about budget, we can solidify on, but one of them was to kind of put a question on the front page of Blackboard asking students if they want to join ASGA, and they can send the information, and we will like follow up with more steps that they can take towards it, like where to get a petition, the requirements and everything. And once they meet all these requirements, we will take their information and put it on the ballots for the elections, along with their headshot, a little bio, and why they want to join SGA or take a certain position within the e-board.
You're the chair, so you have the floor, so if someone has a question, you
Oh,
can.
I didn't see.
No, it's okay.
Just felt okay.
Question. How many members does SGA have so far?
Currently, we have 5, including you.
Alright. This is my question. What is the max number that you can take?
We don't have a maximum number because it's never been an issue of having too many members. It's always been a shortage of members. That's been our issue. So until it becomes relevant to have a maximum number, that's not a discussion we're having.
Big line, there's about 20 members or so, or higher.
That could be a cap if it ever becomes a problem, but again, right now it's not.
I think it's 25 and plus 8.
It is technically, but right, the Constitution is just iffy, so I usually don't refer to it anymore. But technically in our Constitution, it is 25, but we're still in the process of ratifying that, so. And in our current Constitution, we don't have a maximum, so.
Alright. I'll take that into consideration. I think get more people to SGA.
Yeah, absolutely. Chloe had something.
So for the Blackboard, if they're interested, you're just gonna put them on, like, no signatures,
Just to send their information so we can follow with what to do next, to fill out the petition and everything. But they will still have to fill out the petition.
So it'd be like a form of interest of whether students are interested. They could submit this information through Blackboard, and then whoever in the elections committee wants to do it would send out how to get the petition, maybe some more information on what the role that they're interested in is going to be like. Perhaps even we wanted to have an open forum where we would have the candidates in the elections talk about different matters on campus. So letting them be aware that that would happen, getting a headshot from them for the case that is in the C building, which we would like to put up, stuff like that.
Anything else that you would like to say? We propose the form to be on Blackboard from March 12th to March 27th, and then close it that day, like around 11:59 p.m. And then the whole election ballots, they're gonna be on, Blackboard from April 6th to the 28th. And then Terry, during our meetings, we're gonna present the new candidates and, just congratulate them into SGA. And we want to add them to our final
Finalized student government members.
But we are also gonna put a picture of them, and the new positions are over
End of the
The
year
year.
banquet.
the banquet, so the higher ups know who's are the new faces of SGA. We also want to have a tabling event with iPads outside centers, so students that are walking by can bowl.
Felipe?
Is there a question?
Yeah.
How can I access the SGA Blackboard?
What was that?
How to access
Access the
SGA Blackboard, so there's no idea.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
We're working on it.
But I think it's available for access, I'm just not sure how to access it, quite honestly. Stephanie, do you know?
Is it a
I
community?
just wanna ask, I got another question.
Yeah.
So, it's not done yet, okay, the Blackboard is not done yet, but is there any URL?
For Blackboard, yeah, Stephanie.
It's a website, so it has to have a URL or any,
Okay, I just wanna clarify things really quickly, because I feel like there's a miscommunication happening, and that's why people are confused. So, when it's posted on Blackboard, it would be like if you log into your Blackboard, it would be right on the main page next to your courses.
okay.
Yeah, I think he's asking something different there. Yeah.
So when you log in, or any student logs in, you would be able to see this survey that they're talking about. That is a little bit different than the SGA page that Courtney has been working on. The SGA page that Courtney has been working on would have all this information like the elections, who our board is, our minutes, any documents, pictures, information about events. And where that stands right now is Courtney is in communication about how we're going to be sharing that with students. Are we going to allow all students to be a part of it, or do students need to ask to be a part of it? So I'm not 100% sure if she's responded to that. The way I see it, she hasn't responded, but she might have not have replied also to that email. And she might have actually sent her answer already. So once the person that oversees the Blackboard gets that, then they will then do like the back where you would be able to see it and your friends and everyone downstairs.
So it had to be, right?
Yeah, like we've already created the
It has
page,
to be
but you
the
just don't
URL.
have access to see it yet.
Right, and there will be no shareable links for it because it's something that like you as an NECC student would need to log in to get that information. So we couldn't share any links because you need the login information for it.
So the SGA website is gonna have an account system where it has to log in.
Well, it's it runs like Blackboard, you know how you have to log into Blackboard to view your course? You couldn't have a professor share a link to the course, you'd have to log in to view it, if that makes sense.
I can tell you how it works.
Even that, you have to get into you have to access the SGA website, you're gonna get into Blackboard first, and then you can access the,
Right.
so it's kind of intranet, right?
It's a community page on Blackboard, so it's
It's
not.
internet.
Right.
Sure, I don't know what the word is.
It's
show you
not,
afterwards
it's
how
not
to
an,
do it.
it's not an intranet in the sense that, you have to go into your Blackboard shell as you would normally do to access any of your courses, right? But within Blackboard, there are different capabilities, and one of them is called the community site. That community site allows us to create a course within Blackboard itself, aside from where your normal classes are figured. And then the school can add users or people who can access that particular site. So in your case, it would be all students. So anyone who is a student, right. And it would, when you have your Blackboard app, it'll appear under organizations. So you'll be a member of that organization. It's just a nice way to collect data and give information.
Thank you for clarifying, I didn't know how to put that into my own words. Is there anything else about the elections process? Any questions? It's a lot of information, so.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Rose, are you or is there somebody else assigned to reach out to create this survey, and if so, by when?
I'm reaching out to Melba Acevedo to create it, and
Um, Yeah, we actually did make a task list, so can you refresh, the survey of who's
Yeah.
gonna make the survey? So we don't actually have like an assigned to and a due date for that yet.
well, I will be emailing Melba by the latest Wednesday.
And I know that we wanted to reach out to Courtney, to have it set up in the same way that the behavioral class gift was, so that people could, it wouldn't just be one question, it would be multiple, but, having Courtney's help in how to create this, and then sending that to Melba, and I'm assuming Rosie Ellis will be doing that. But I also did want to mention that Chloe, since you're not going to be returning to student government, it is in student government's interest that you would join this committee, because technically those who are going to be running in the elections can, and I or Courtney may possibly be doing that, so. Yeah. So now you have Chloe. Anything else for the elections committee? Oh, voting on flyer money. So what was gonna be in my report, but I'm just gonna say it now. So I did reach out to Amy, who is in academic coaching, and she said that we would be able to table outside of her center this Monday from 12:30 to 1:30 p.m., which is when our e-board meeting was set, but now we are using that time for recruitment. So what we wanted to do is actually start creating flyers for people to get interest in running in the elections process. So we did need to vote on flyer money. Again, I would vote around $10. So this would be something like join SGA, this is when the elections process is happening, maybe like an email for who to contact, stuff like that.
I'm not sure it's publication because I know we want to color.
Oh, as well as the petitions, because we wanted to have those in color for students, just to show some more formality. So in total, I'd probably do like $20. Yeah.
I move to take $20 out of the budget to print out flyers and color petitions to table outside academic centers for the upcoming elections.
Second. The motion is as follows: to take $20 from our budget for flyer money and petition money. Any debate or discussion? All approved. The motion passes to take $20 from our budget for this. Anything else for elections, Chloe?
Yes, where's the Amy?
In the academic coaching center in the C building. Anything else? Alrighty.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
How were the $20 for? Didn't hear exactly, sorry.
I couldn't hear you.
You said that we're gonna use $20 from the budget for?
$20 for flyers so that we can promote the elections process that's coming up, as well as printing out our petitions, like the one with the 50 signatures, having those printed in color. and that's all.
$20 only?
It probably won't cost $20, but it's better to budget out a little bit more.
Less color.
We do our printing through Repro Graphics, so they have set amounts that they do for printing.
But normally the color is no.
They're just
Not
over
cheap.
budgeting so that it can, like, they don't run over. And then the money will just go back.
We probably won't spend $20, we'll probably spend like $10.
Is you want to promote the election.
Yep, and as well as it's not just the colors, it's also the paper quality as well. Yeah.
That's why, how many copies?
Usually we do 60 copies for like flyers so that we can promote it all around, not only the Haverhill campus, but the Lawrence campus as well. And then for petitions, we probably print out 30 or so.
Or 3 in large campus?
Competitions.
Petitions.
60 flyers.
Is it flyers or petitions? And was it white or paper? Because all counts in, the color is something, the quality is something, the amount is something. I think $20 is,
Right, but we won't be using the $20
okay,
in full.
I agree for
Right.
now, yeah.
Plus,
It's just that
just to,
Austin
right.
graphics and $20 not usually, because I've seen some, when I was in high school, I was in graphics in the boat, and when some teachers ordered some papers in color, and they were about $10, about copies of 50, it was about $100, new glass, $35.
Reprographic does it for cost, so they don't,
Yeah,
it's not very much.
We have like a repro graphics thing that like runs it on campus, so like we've been ordering all of our stuff.
Yeah,
It
it was in high school. In high.
Oh, in your high school.
It was inside, and it still was very expensive. So that's why I'm kind of concerned about.
Well, they've been like printing, I don't know, probably like at least 5 different flyers this year, and so they've been around that amount of money for them.
I'll be sure to give an update of how much the exact cost is next week.
I think it's gonna be around $30. I think.
You think it's closer to $30 than $20? Did you say you think it would be closer to $30 than $20?
Just because of the amount, the quality, if it's normal paper, just 8.5 by 11, which is
Yeah.
a normal paper, which is the size of this.
It is 8.5 by 11.
Hmm?
It is.
8.5 by 11, okay.
Yeah.
So, sorry, almost 20.
Usually $20 is a good amount to budget for what we're asking for.
I lean more towards 30 because if it's normal paper, just normal paper, just normal texture and normal size, it's gonna be around that amount. If it's color, it's gonna be around that amount. If it's just black and white, it's gonna be around 20. Because the difference between black and white and color is a lot. I've seen it because
Right.
my high school, black and white was about 0.50 cents and color was about $120.
So I can pull up the specifics if you'd want of what Reprographics has. It would just take me a second. The reason that I chose $20 is because I was actually the marketing chair of student government last year. So I worked very closely with Reprographics. And this is usually the amount that it would come to for what I'm asking for. So I said that amount because that's what's come from my experience. But I can go through and tell you the exact pricing.
That amount because of my brain.
So for 8.5 by 11, one-sided, the first 100, like a batch of the first 100, would be 30 cents each. So if we're doing 60, it would be $18 for that. And then if we're doing the petitions, actually probably be closer to $27. But the thing is also with reprographics, and Stephanie and I have had conversations about this, is that sometimes the pricing isn't always consistent. So while they gave me this, usually they actually give it to us for a lower price than what they state the price is. They just have that price stated, but usually they give it to us for less, so.
Oh yeah, sometimes that happens because it's kind of consistent, but it's not ever consistent because there's a lot of variables that can change the price. So
Right.
yeah,
If,
so you said 7 around.
it would be 27 if I like actually budgeted in, so
Oh,
if
that's
someone
kind of-
wanted to move for an extra $7, we could, but it's up to you guys.
You have to make a motion.
If you want to have more budget for the printing.
Yeah, I would like to.
So
That would be, you know,
the way you make a motion, you would say, I move to, and then you would state your motion. And so in this case, you would say, I move to have $7 more in the budget for printing flyers for elections.
alright. I want to put $7 more into the budget to initial value of $20 for the printing of flyers. Anyone agrees?
Someone has to second the motion. And if no one seconds the motion, then it is abolished.
Alright.
Okay, wait, did you say that?
What?
I guess to be your peace of mind, I'll say that. So we have-
It's peer pressure, I see.
You don't have to.
It's his first motion.
Yes, I don't know
Okay.
if that. We can split them like that.
Sure. The motion is as follows, to take $27, well, add an additional $7 to our budget for printing flyers for elections. Any debate or discussion? All approved? The motion passes to add another $7 to our budget for printing. Is there anything else about the elections committee? Questions, comments, concerns? I think it would be also a good idea if we typed up all the, actually no, it'll be in the minutes. So maybe if we could give you more information on how to structure out the minutes so that people can see the exact dates we have in mind. Okay. Back to our
Said all that. Yeah.
So next is our executive advisor and trustee reports. So for my report, I had said that we're going to be tabling academic coaching. So this Monday, the 9th of March, from 12:30 to 1:30 p.m. I will go upstairs actually right after this meeting and kind of gather our things together of what we would want to take. Make sure to wear your polos. And yes, this would be for everybody who normally attends the exec board meetings would be expected to come to this. And that's all I have for my report today. And then next we have Vice President of Lawrence Rosielis.
I met last week with Stephanie about the April diversity event. Sorry, it's not anything for me.
It's okay.
Just print it out in my phone and go after that,
Oh no.
which is great.
Okay.
Anyways,
Do you want me to go to Chloe and then go back, or are you all set?
We decided that it's gonna be just one day in Lawrence, and then we just convert into payroll and then dismiss the building. Everybody's welcome to come to El Hefney for a meet and greet after the panel. But the room is only for 60 people, it only takes 60 people.
Can you re-explain the event for those who aren't aware?
Okay, so we are trying to make it a diversity event, inclusion, and I propose a panel with people from different backgrounds, entrepreneurs who show how they fought through the obstacles and barriers to have the success that they have now, kind of like an inspiration to our students. We are thinking of bringing an FNL player and 2 more speakers, just to kind of inspire our students. And about that, I talked to Mr. Valdez yesterday, and he said that the cost for Justin Patel, which would be the one of the speakers invited, would be $4,000. And that would cover transportation, security, and his time. Any questions? Anything that anybody wants to say about that?
Does anyone need any clarification of what's happening? Yeah.
So it's starting, just one day? and
Yes.
It's gonna be in March?
Yes, it's gonna be
Conference to April.
a Tuesday. We haven't decided which week from the last 2 weeks of April, but it will be from 12 to 2 in the El Hefney second floor conference room.
Anything else about the Diversity Month event?
I mean, I know that I haven't given a lot of information. Budget has been what has stopped most of the preparation for that event, because we're not sure if we can accommodate the $4,000 to pay for Justin Mattel, and if we have the money on our budget. After I meet with Sam and Ali, I'll talk more about this and how I plan to move forward with the event.
Is that all for your report? Awesome. Moving on to our secretary, Chloe.
So my report was just about Amy reaching back, and Sheila reaching back. I'm still waiting to hear back from Ally. I think I'll wait a little bit until, I know you said she's out on vacation, so,
Until Monday is when she would respond.
yeah. So I guess just waiting her out.
Awesome. I know we're not supposed to talk during reports, but I kind of don't care. So with that, I think, again, we should just say that we have those dates solidified and still contacting like Amy and telling her you're going to present on this day. And if Ally cannot make the same day as Amy, then I think unfortunately it just wouldn't work out. Yeah. Moving on, we have our advisor, Stephanie Haskell.
Audrey, who oversees our Navigate for the campus, reached out to me and asked for Student Government Association members if they're willing and want to. She's trying to collect some tips that you would have for students about whether it's using the app or the platform, but any tips that you would have for students. And she asked that if you do and you want to share it, that you send it to navigate@nacc.mass.edu. I think she's in some way going to be showcasing these, whether it's on the app, I don't fully know. But I did forward that email to the SGA email if you guys are interested in reading all of the details. I also got an email inviting SGA members, if you're interested, to a White Ribbon Day celebration. I posted about it on our social media today. The event is very early in the morning. It's at 7:30 to 9:30 on March 19th. You can see more information on there. I think that there's also might have been a campus invite today via email. But you do need to RSVP by 3/11 if you're interested. I also just put in the group chat, but I cannot add Felipe to the Facebook group because of the permission. So if somebody that has more permissions than I could add him, that would be great. He does have a Facebook to be able to be in that messenger group. And then I also lastly want to share that I know on Monday you just confirmed that you'll be tabling at the academic coaching or outside academic coaching. I will, just so that you guys are aware, I will not be on campus on Monday. I'll be at a session in Rhode Island, just so that you guys are aware.
Is that all for your report?
Go ahead.
Continue. Continue.
The last thing is I just wanted to bring additional awareness to next Wednesday on the Lawrence campus. It will be March 11th from 5 to 8. There is a passport to inclusion and multicultural extravaganza. We will have close to $1,000 or more worth of different foods. You can have a taste of the world. We'll have different performances, including a group from Lawrence High School, some belly dancing, and a variety of other activities. So I definitely would like to invite you guys to join us in Lawrence next Wednesday. That ends my report.
Great, thank you. What were you gonna say?
What time?
Oh, it's from 5 to 8 p.m. All right. So I did want to note the last two things on the agenda. There are vacant positions, and now including parliamentarian. There's treasurer, programming chair of Lawrence, programming chair of April, and marketing chair. So these positions are open at any point during the year, at least as an acting member. So like Rosie Ellis, you could be appointed as an acting member to facilitate that position. And as other additional reminders, we're going to be having our walking tour of Lawrence on March 12th from 11 to 3 p.m. on the Lawrence campus. This is a tour with Dr. Mesquita and Dr. Custodia to go around the Lawrence campus and decide what else we want to use with our Lawrence class gift money. In addition, the Student Advisory Council meeting that we discussed is on March 26th from 4 to 7 p.m. The location is Bunker Hill Community College. And that is it. I need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I move to adjourn the meeting at 5:47 p.m.
Oh, I think the invite has that for some reason. It used to, and I think it got changed. So the walking tour is from 2 to 3 p.m. I believe the calendar invite or something was changed. But you had the motion to adjourn.
I'm on shut to adjourn. She already motioned it.
Oh, I second, sorry.
The motion is as follows: to adjourn the meeting at now 5:48 p.m. Any debate or discussion? All approved? The motion passes and we adjourn the meeting officially at 5:48 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Oh, for ending the meeting.
Sheila, hey.
How are you?
Long time no see.
I know.
So I don't know what's going on with you. The only invitation I got was for,
I thought you were no longer going to be with us.
I'm on.
So, no, absolutely. I will add you to the invitations right now. I don't know why.
We just
I got
This is what we
something
look like.
from,
There you are, since you started talking, so it like looks at you. It's an interesting camera.
Susan. She
Alright.
sent me an invite.
Oh,
cute.
Susan wanted to put her, the dates into her calendar, and instead of just putting it in her calendar, she piggybacked on an old executive committee already established invite. So she's invited people who are no longer even in our, but let me add you.
Are you
But,
gonna do it?
Could you please email me the, when you have them, like minutes, and is there, and the agenda, please?
Yeah, the agenda, do you have the agenda?
I thought there were storage of copies.
Huh?
The
What was the
agenda?
question? Do you want a picture?
Sure.
If you need a digital copy, I could send that as well.
Yeah, no, if there's, because I thought I heard you say there weren't enough paper copies or something like that.
Here, please, do you want to please sign?
Oh, I think Lane did put one, so just.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, Yeah, I'm taking a very light load of classes this semester, so I've been trying to do extra stuff.
Thank you for letting me know.
Is it
Oh, yeah, I was like, yeah,
Is it semester-based for this year?
No, it's not, but I just simply assumed that, I don't know why. It would have been the whole year. I, forgive me, I
No,
completely
that's
had it.
really not.
That's all on me.
I know, it was such a nice.
So the next meeting,
I was like, are you talking about?
Thank you.
this?
It's on
Okay,
there.
try this aloud. It's like 20 seconds, is it okay? Oh, God.
I mean,
No,
I
it's
think-
okay.
This is good, but.
Mark,
Oh, wait.
I'm glad I
The only complication I've faced is I have like work Wednesday morning, is the only Tuesday I have. So I get out at 3,
So
but that's flexible.
we have an executive meeting on the 11th.
Me?
Okay.
Is that okay for you?
It might be kind of short notice to get to work, but I will absolutely do the best to do it.
I'll send you some of this stuff.
Let me ask you,
Every day. That what you want? Every day. Oh, or we could just, you know.
I'd love to talk to you guys too.
yeah,
You guys have lunch, you guys, everyone.
If you guys want, I don't know. I've been looking for some extra stuff and I noticed you guys need some help, so. No, I'm serious, like, I'm very serious,
Yes.
so I'd love to see what you guys want.
Questions and answers, just for clarification.
Can you join me in a non-member?
absolutely. Let me just do this, and then I'm with you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So I wish I had thought of these when President Glenn was here. Because that was,
No worries, no worries.
I provided pretty good
No, we were
coverage,
kicked out. We didn't.
balanced coverage of the presentation he just gave. And I was wondering,
There's gonna be a new dean of students.
if
on
anyone
campus.
in the executive
So,
committee or any
the-
higher up has
Dr.
any problem with the way
Mesquita
President
was
Glenn is presenting his
dean on-
case,
Yeah.
or the way he's trying to institute this diversity change. Just wanted to know if there's been any criticism of that.
Not a criticism, more of
I
a
would skip tonight,
discussion
but-
as to how to go about it. We have, as an organization, joined the consortium from Bridgewater,
Yeah.
Is this
which
yours?
is a
Yes.
consortium of several colleges who kind of initiated this kind of a data-driven
Yes.
concept, and the committee that we have currently called Leading for Change has taken that initiative
Yeah.
on board, but we are catering it to what our needs are to some
Yeah.
extent. So what we've kind of done is to try to figure out how can we invoke change within.
Mhm.
But as far as the committee is concerned, there are questions as to whether it should be a temporary and have it kind of lead up to us having a more permanent person who kind of like a diversity director
Mhm.
who will then take everything else
Yeah.
on along with what we've already accomplished.
Right.
So we're kind of weighing out the options as to whether that is needed or not, though that is always in the background because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of that's currently being done through the Center for Professional Development,
Mhm.
and discussion on whether would we have more focus if we had someone who really took the initiatives and kind of did a feasibility analysis of finding out what is on currently doing, what are the things that we're missing, so for it to be more comprehensive.
Yes.
So we have a mixture of individuals who think one way or the other. So this is, I think, why we haven't really decided on anything, because we haven't coalitioned as a group yet to make a strong enough of a case
Right.
for it to be. Because there are financial ramifications, as you mentioned, of course, because it's a big job,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so if we can do something for the time being until enrollment is better, budgets are better, and we have that availability, we've kind of taken that on ourselves. So I don't feel that there is a disagreement or there is a divergence of ideas on this. We're just kind of understanding each other's reasons and ramifications of those decisions until we get to a better place.
Yeah, and just to clarify, this director
Mhm.
would be primarily concerned with hiring a more diverse staff and filling
Not
empty
necessarily.
positions? Or, yeah, what would the primary
No.
concern of this
So
occupation be?
when you think of an organization, the way it's run, you're looking at every single thing within that, right, inner working. So it
Yes.
could be simply a document that's written, that's sent out to students, for example. Is the wording of that document, for example, if you're getting a suspension letter,
Yes.
is the wording of that letter done in such a way that one, the student of a particular minority group would have better response to,
Mhm.
would not feel threatened by it, but then would
Yeah.
want to go ahead and come in and see if they can fix things?
Mhm.
Or is that just going to prevent that student and create a wall, and that student is just never ever going to see us again?
I see.
Right.
So,
So when you're talking about diversity, it's not just the hiring staff mimicking kind of our student body, but it really integrates into every fiber of our
Yeah.
being, right? And sometimes it even goes into, faculty professional development in which we do have currently, but more evolved, more kind of with a broader perspectives on how do we create within our classrooms a more inclusive,
so yeah.
right? So it's not just one thing in the college, it's really every single thing, all the policies we have. Does it benefit one particular group of students or people versus another? And diversity is such a big word. It's not Hispanic students versus white students, right? It's gender equality and all of those things. So exactly. So when you think about every single email you might have received from the college, right? And for those have to be rewritten.
I see. So essentially this would be like a very macro level job where they'd be concerned with the wording of emails so as not to kind of alienate certain groups because, I do understand that, but could you please provide me a specific instance that you may know of, or even a hypothetical instance where someone could be, I don't know, it could take things the wrong way or a message wasn't racially or ethnically conscious enough?
I don't know if it was the messages would have been racially, and I forgive me, I can't give you a specific one, but I think for us in the past, we have looked at the suspension policy basically, or not just the policy in and of itself, but suspension letters.
Yes.
Or that were not being mindful of how the student receives this information.
What do you mean by that?
So they would be very, and I don't want to say threatening in the sense that you're being suspended.
All right,
but
you're being terminated.
right,
Yes,
the word even termination or suspension has negative connotations, and one group of individuals might take it in a completely different way than the others, right? So what is the perception of the words that we are using within the context of the community of students that we are kind of dealing with?
Right.
So it's not necessarily changing the formatting of every single thing, but really in a very, macro, but in a very micro way, to be able to look at our policies written in such a way that they are discriminating one voice versus another, just by virtue of the words that we are using to communicate that information.
Right. So you're essentially looking at people's different meaning systems and seeing, so in order to reduce the amount of kind of, I guess, semantic noise present in these interactions, you're trying to just make things as clear as possible, as non-threatening as possible, just very, very careful
Exactly.
instructions. Yeah.
Right.
So,
And that's very difficult to accomplish when you have small groups of individuals within, college trying to do because it's the amount of work is unfathomable for someone like me even. To when you land kind of in this organization, and then now you have to cherry pick the major parts, understand what are the biggest issues we have, and then as soon as those are being resolved, then really delve into the fabric of what makes us who we are, right? And of course, there's the whole changing of cultures. The culture of the college, and how even when we speak in the classroom, you can't necessarily tell a particular professor to speak this way or do
No,
this,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, you gotta be careful.
You have that academic freedom, however, you can provide professional development that allows a more broadening of those horizons. And we've done that, we can do that, but do we need more? Do we need to have more focus groups or whatever
Right,
it might be?
And this kind of evaluation would come from this hypothetical diversity coordinator director.
Correct.
et cetera.
Hopefully they've
Yeah.
done it in other places or,
Right,
have maybe attempted in certain versions of it. But they would have to be more kind of understanding of the legalities of things, and which we may not necessarily have, right?
Yeah.
Which we kind of will take us more time to figure things out.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, because now everything's more clear. And just one
Yeah.
last one.
Sure.
Do you know of anyone in the community or even like on a national scale who would be? No, actually, never mind. Scratch that. The initially, President Glenn, he was talking about the LIFT campaign,
Yeah.
and I was wondering if that scholarship fund. So just to get this right, it's essentially funded by like charity contributions from the community at large.
Right. So think
yeah.
of it as a fundraising effort in and of itself.
Oh yeah.
So when you do fundraisers, especially for organizations, and you go to groups who normally have given before, like bands and so on and so forth, everyone has a particular affinity towards something, because you ask the question, what's in it for me? If I'm giving you money, I need to get something back, right?
Yes, yeah.
So either I have a plaque on the wall, or I am trying to promote something that my company believes in.
Yeah.
So when they developed this campaign to get funding for certain things we need, athletics was on kind of, if you will, on the list of things. The library, technology, there was something regarding facilities. There were, let's say, 10 categories of things that we needed help with, we needed money for.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those, the Lawrence Success Fund and the Haverhill Success Fund were kind of in those. And so they go out into the community, say, we need money for this. This is what we think we can accomplish.
Yeah.
They're like, yes, I will give you money, but I want it to go to this category.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? So the Success Fund has been kind of the focal point, because that's the one that's best kind of shown success, not only in kind of what companies are trying to do, which is not emboldening the socioeconomic status of the community to kind of become better, right? So to provide funding for students, scholarships for students to go to school from low-income families or whatever it might be, the definitive categories. What wins the heart of people. So for now, it looks like we've been able to really fulfill our goal for the Haverhill or Lawrence in particular. It's the 1 million goal.
Yeah.
And then Haverhill as well, we're halfway for the 1 million goal.
Yeah. So
right?
so that's more facilities, things on campus. And I did hear President Glenn mention scholarships in relation to that.
So those are the scholarships.
So that covers facilities on. So the LIFT campaign essentially covers facilities here, on campus costs, as well as scholarships. So it's like a big
that
blanket.
10 list of things.
Mm-hmm.
The scholarships are like number 1 and 2.
Right. So that's
facilities, IT. So the way normally people donate is either they say, okay, I give you $10,000, apply it to whatever you want, or I want it to go here, right? So whatever money we have that can be used for anything, then it goes into the categories that maybe don't have enough funding.
Exactly, yeah.
Right? But it looks like the 2 scholarships, which are the success funds, have been really, really kind of, they're hitting the mark. It's speaking to people who want to give money, so those goals are being met first. Now they just have to start working on collecting money for the rest of facilities, library, IT, and so on and so forth. Kind of the infrastructure, if you will. And athletics.
Thank you.
But so those are kind of.
Yeah. And then.
But the whole thing is called the LIFT campaign.
Yeah, the whole thing, yeah. And then one last question. So President Glenn, he talked about increasing diversity in the workplace here. Of course, we've been talking about that. And I was wondering if there was anyone who directly agrees with him, because there's this narrative, I personally think it's ridiculous, the like anti-white discrimination, equal protection clause narrative that comes out.
Right.
Like, I think the student there, he mentioned like the Michigan SCOTUS case,
Yeah.
that was a big scandal. And I
Right.
was wondering if there's anyone that's voiced opposition to what he's been saying.
No, because I think we are more concerned with our student body having the role models they need on
Mhm.
campus, the
Yeah.
mentors they need.
Yeah.
And so it's not necessarily, like you were saying, filling a quota of sorts.
Yeah.
It's more really, does our staff and faculty reflect our students so that our students have someone to look up to?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Which we've been working at, and it's hit or miss depending on, and that kind of reflects in the whole recruiting process too. When I was talking about how things are phrased, we go into the recruiting as well, right? When you write a description for a job that is so convoluted and it has so many aspects that doesn't really match the amount of money you're willing to pay for individuals, then it creates a certain gap or a wall that people are just not going to even look at it, right?
Yes.
So then it doesn't allow us to have a larger pool of individuals to tap into. So we've been looking at, or Human Resources of Mike McCarthy has been looking at, how do we then rephrase these positions so that we do get the hire, right? For example, how do we get on different sites that actually promote more diverse individuals? So what I mean by that is, for example, you've got, let's say, 3 websites that people will usually go do their job search on, right? But is one particular one has a higher pool of more diverse individuals, and I just don't mean Hispanic, but more diverse individuals actually tend to go on there, right? So should we advertise here more as opposed to spending money in anything else?
Yeah. So
Right, so those decisions matter.
So you're creating a more diverse. You're trying to create a more diverse pool of applicants, but not necessarily a more ethnically diverse workplace, just more ethnically conscious workplace.
Correct.
So
And by doing that, I think we are going to invite people to actually come.
Yeah. So even if it's a white person who's equally qualified, you can't really establish quotas. But yeah, it's just the conscientiousness and
right.
Yeah.
Is how do you express your desire to find someone for a particular position in a way that reaches out a much wider pool of individuals, varied and diverse individuals, so that you have more to choose from.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And if we continue the way we're doing, then we're only reaching, the kind of the white male or the white female.
Yeah.
Right? And they may be very well qualified, and that's fine. However, if by just the way we're wording things, we're limiting an incredible already group of people, then we're not doing our own population and community service.
Yeah.
Right?
I see. Yeah.
But no opposition to that. I don't think I know of anyone on campus that I've had contact with that disagrees that we need a kind of faculty and employees or staff that reflect our students.
Yeah.
Right? And so.
Yeah. So if the qualified candidate were to come along, you'd really accept the individual, but you're not going to establish strange rules to target certain minority groups.
Oh,
Is essentially what you're saying. No, that's
exactly.
not. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And I think if we did that, then you would have
You'd have
people
legal
who
trouble
would,
because it's against federal law.
not just legal trouble, but you
Yeah.
would then have people uprising as to,
Yeah, that's it.
that's just doesn't make sense.
No.
Right?
Yeah. It's.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. That's pretty much all I wanted to know. That's all the
Okay, no
questions I
worries.
had. Thank you so much for sticking around.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
It's going to be a much better story now that all the clarifications have been made.
Good, good.